And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to a victorious edition of Hoosier Morning After. Little melancholy edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Michigan. Last night, your Indiana Hoosiers go into overtime and defeat Michigan 75-73, improving their record to 21-10 on the season, finishing the regular season with that record, finishing the Big Ten season with a 12-8 record. That allows IU to be tied for second in the Big Ten. We'll end up getting IU the third place seeding in the Big Ten tournament because of the head-to-head against Northwestern, how that lines out. And we'll get in depth a little bit on that when we talk about the games moving forward. I actually like that. I favor that. IU has, I feel like, a little bit better of a matchup possibility because of that. But anyways, IU gets the double bye after a very, very confusing spreadsheet latent week that we had. Thank you to those that dug in and put those things out there. I'm a visual person myself, so it was great to see that. But all the craziness that this Big Ten season has been this year led us up to the fact where we went into this game and win this game. We clinched the bye, either second or third, and lose it, and we could have been as low as 9. So crazy the way this Big Ten season has landed and how muddy it has been in that middle portion, top middle, I would even say, or maybe that's full middle with how many teams were in that. But anyways, Indiana fights back in this game to win it, and a game again that we've said before on this show that past season teams would not have fought back like they did. And so again, that's great resolve to see. And IU continues to prove that they're one of their biggest strengths is their ability to be like Jekyll and Hyde. Came out with fire and effort, disrupting everything that Michigan tried to do and get going on the defensive end. Got themselves up by a 14-point lead, and then IU kind of relaxed on defense. We were kind of forcing them to bad shots and everything on their offensive side, on our defensive end, and a little bit of foul trouble from some of our guards, I think, led to that, as well as the lead, who kind of relaxed a little bit. And that relaxing was all that Michigan needed. They surged back in the last few minutes to bring it within 2 at the half. Second half, Michigan kind of continued where they had left off and played through Dickerson. And our offense kind of continued to struggle. Again, our offense, I don't believe in the first half truly was firing on all cylinders like it should with how low scoring the first half was. But just bad shot selection and starting to lack on the defensive end allowed Michigan to take the lead and get us very nervous at that point. And you kind of saw where the game was and hoped for Indiana to have a leader and one of the seniors step up and say, this is not how I want this game to finish. The lead for Michigan got up to IU, and then IU clamped back down on the defensive end, and also kind of sparked by someone that we haven't seen play, and we'll get in depth to him a little bit more, Tamar Bates hitting a 3 that really kind of switched the momentum. And we got those stops on D, and we're getting decent looks on offense, and drew it in close. And at the end of the game, got really nervous as well because the offense started to lack again. We were missing shots, missing opportunities that we had on the other end of the game, on the other end of the ball. But it was definitely the offensive side of the ball, getting it to Trace, and then Jalen Hood-Schifino hits that huge 3 to make it 69 to force it into overtime. And how great would it have been? Trace Jackson-Davis nearly makes the half-court shot. Anyone that's been at IU games knows that him and Anthony Leal and Race shoot those right before they go into the locker room after the first shoot around. So he's made those. He's practiced those, and Leal has the better percentage. So it would have been interesting to put him in there and let him get that shot. But that was close. That would have been amazing. That would have blown off the thing. But lost and missed opportunities in regulation to put it away there. But the D continued to lock things down into overtime. Took care of business on the offensive end and in the paint, with Race kind of taking it to Dickerson on a few moments. So just led to the win on senior night. Great senior speeches. We'll get into it as we go. Thank you for being here with us. I am your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Here with me is Martha the Mop Lady. Martha coming in hot on us. A busy night, mopping up the tears of IU fans on a senior night and everything. Martha, give me your thoughts on that game last night.
Yep, I was working overtime last night, but all things honest, I was down at the game, and it was a late night. Stayed for the speeches and got up back home to northern Indiana pretty late into the evening, and trying to get children around for an early Monday morning of school has been an adventure. But we're here, right? We're here. So it was and I think Nick over in the comments makes a great point. It was a game that I think that was very indicative of kind of the season in a whole, right? With the ups and the downs and the challenges, and Big Ten's tough, right? We like to eat our own, as they say, and this was another example. And it was one of those days in Bloomington where, while you can feel spring in the air, it had a level of bittersweet to it, because you knew it was a lot of good guys last game in that arena. So it was one of those deals where had a level of bittersweet to it. And you always wonder how that affects the seniors too. I think senior days can be weird for some guys, knowing that their entire families are there. And, it's some added pressure. And I don't know that spoke to any of the struggles that I thought Miller struggled in the first half. Jet Howard is a tough ask for anybody, and especially for Miller to try to check him, and threes weren't landing, and I think even Race missed some shots in the first half. So there was some pressure there, and you even felt while we were out to get to that 14-point lead in the first half that we were leaving a ton of points on the court. I remember talking to some guys out in the lobby a little bit at halftime, saying, "Man, and that's when we had blown the lead a little bit. It was like, man, I felt like we had a chance to put them away, and we just didn't." So. But you battle and you find a way. And to me, it's one of those lessons of why you don't tweet at halftime, right? Because people were firing off a lot of hot takes, and usually that's me. And I think because I was at the game, I didn't have time to do that, or I probably would have been right there with them. But at the end of the day, you look at Race Thompson, you look at that three that Miller hit in the corner, and enough said about Trace. A guy like Tamar Bates stepping up when he hadn't, he's had 2 points in the last 2 months, it feels like. So, you never know what it's going to take, but at the end of the day, we found a way. And I think that's what's important is, especially coming off Tuesday, the debacle against Iowa. So I'm just excited that these seniors could go out with the win and set ourselves up in great position for the Big Ten tournament.
Yep. And a great matchup, like I said, in the Big Ten tournament that we have coming forward. And this fight that this team has shown this year will only serve us well. And it also, on the other end, how we can get this fall-off will also not serve us well, in the exact opposite. But as we go along here, we're going to kind of talk about, we got to talk about our seniors first and everything. We'll talk a little bit about their game and just kind of what they've meant for this IU team. But you kind of mentioned Miller Kopp. I think I want to get to him first. And despite my favorite thing about it, and like you said, he struggled kind of in the first half. Those threes weren't falling for him. A lot of missed shots. Really struggled on the defensive side, but he kept with it. And I love the fight that he had, because he did make some big threes for us in the second half. And then I believe the second half and into overtime, it was partially his defense and his lockdown and how the guys stayed connected that kept us in that. And it's very interesting to see the stat that's talked about in Miller Kopp, that he now has the record for the most Big Ten games played, I believe at 99. And yes, you heard that right. That is a record that an IU guy has, not a Wisconsin or Purdue guy. I know you would feel like one of those 40-year-olds that play for those two teams would have it, but Miller Kopp, with the great COVID year, obviously, in those other situations, able to get that record, which is very interesting. May not be replicated in the future. But again, just thankful from the senior side for Miller Kopp to come over. I know he's been someone that has uh, been the subject of a lot of ridicule for this team, and has been one that a lot of people have gotten on to him for not taking shots when he should have, and his defense. But I think he's made so many strides this year in getting things going and getting his game going in the right way, and just his overall personality that we've gotten to see. I love watching. I know this is going to trigger a few of the fans listening and everything, because a lot of them don't like this stuff, but I love to see his stuff that he does outside of it, his social media, his YouTube page, and everything. Getting those glimpses into this team and how they are off the court, and their energy and their camaraderie and everything. I'm thankful that he was able to come. He said in his senior speeches, and the video that was before, that he strived and looked to play at a place with a huge basketball history, and that he knew what it meant to play for IU, what it meant to put on that jersey. And I'm thankful for his effort in the situations that he's done. And there's, like I said, it feels like we're sending them to pasture, but there's still a lot of games to be played. And I love the trajectory and where he is now, again, because the very first game that I saw him play in an Indiana uniform was when I was lucky enough to see him in the Bahamas. And I was so excited for what he could do for this team. And we didn't see it in his first year. And we're only now seeing, I believe, what I saw in the Bahamas now out of this Miller Kopp. Someone that is not afraid to drive past his defender after they guard him hard for that three-point shot and make little floaters, to be there ready to hit those shots at a high clip and bring that energy and that spark and spice that he can. So grateful to have him on this team. Talk about Miller Kopp in this game, and then just him overall as a senior.
My favorite Miller Kopp highlight from yesterday might be when he filled out his senior day information as a graduating with a degree in aeronautical engineering, and Jeremy
Fantastic
Gray
troll by him there.
The fact that Jeremy Gray read it and didn't realize it and started laughing a few moments later was classic Miller right there, right? And I think it embodies what you just said, right? He's a guy that his teammates enjoy being around. He's kind of a glue. We talk about Race being a glue guy. I think Miller's that guy too. And I love how candid he was after, and transparent he was after the game, just sharing some of the struggles he had last year, and asking himself, why am I here? And he had his ups and downs, right? But I think he really found his stride, and as he mentioned, kind of found his home this year. And again, the game embodied kind of our season as a whole. I think the game yesterday kind of embodied his career a little bit as a whole, right? It had its ups and downs. It started off a little bit with some struggles, but he found a way and contributed, right? That two in the corner could have very easily been a three. I think his foot was on the line. I mean, that was a massive shot down the stretch. So just kept with it, right? I think that's what Miller's done. And at the end of the day, he's a guy that's leaving with a degree from Northwestern, with a degree from Indiana, and that's what it's all about, right? He's set up to have himself a hell of a future without basketball in his life. So just got to be appreciative of a guy like that who's come in and put his head down. And you could hear Woody talk about him after the game, just saying, you've shown up every day and worked and worked and worked. And Woody's always going to have his back. And you hear your coach say that means the world. So just found a way, right? I think you look at kind of his struggles in the first half defensively. I think he found a way to reel that in a little bit in the second half and play some better defense. But again, those baskets down the stretch were huge, and I don't know that we win without him.
Yep. Next one to talk about is our glue guy, Race Thompson. Probably the best game I think that we've seen from him this year. A few big free throws at the end that he missed that were a little scary at the end. You can only imagine how heavy those free throws felt for him. You talk about that they kind of iced him there with that timeout on those free throws and everything, and that's more of a football kind of thing to do and everything. It usually doesn't really do anything in basketball, but when you kind of look back and think about the road that he has had to go through as a Hoosier, and everything, and the game on the line on his senior night and everything like that, you can't tell me that things weren't just swirling in his head in that moment, because we all know what he has gone through as a Hoosier. And just a great game for him, a double double, two huge steals at towards the end of the game from him, uh, digging down on Dickerson. Um, at least in my lifetime of focusing on IU basketball, not sure I could think of another player that has had to go through quite the emotional roller coaster that we've had to go through with Race, the concussion that he had earlier in his season, and then just the injury earlier in this season. How much Hoosier Nation's heart just broke when you see Race Thompson, someone that's put his blood, sweat, and tears on the court for IU. They're nearly sobbing because he thought his IU career was over at that point. But to be able to get good news from that and fight back, and yeah, he hasn't been himself fully in a lot of these games since he's been back, but this was the game that we saw that Race Thompson back, and again, that's exciting to think about now. Now we get to go into two tournaments with our glue guy back to being our glue guy, but just can't thank him enough for what he's done. And he's another one that's been, of course, of a lot of ridicule and everything, and criticism by me as well. When we've kind of talked about games where we had Trace Jackson Davis in, and we thought like we were putting two big guys in at the same time, and how big of a mistake that is. But he has done what he needs to do for this team, and he's continued to be the hard hat guy that get the work done. And I thank him so much for sticking with it and coming back this final year. And it's just been great to have that presence out of him, and to think about the years and years he's been. He came in reclassified in 2017 and sat on the bench as a redshirt freshman. It's been here in those candy stripes for so long, and it continued to be the ridicule. It was great to see. Even Woody said when he was introducing him and thanking him, been here for about 10 years or something, some joke to that degree. It was funny to see. But thank you so much to Race Thompson and what he's done. Talk about Race.
Yeah, you a nail on the head there. You think about some of those baskets he had yesterday going up against Hunter Dickinson. Big baskets down the stretch where, the offense didn't seem to have a whole lot of answers in the moment, but we were able to work through him a little bit down the stretch. And, you saw it with the shot clock winding down and him backing down Dickinson. You're like, is that really our best option at this point? But he seized the moment, man, and knocked down some big ones and had a pretty big three in the first half. It's always that gasp in Assembly Hall when Race Thompson takes a three. And sometimes it's one of those deals where now that he's made one, is he going to keep shooting them? But no, I mean, you had the nail on the head. Just a warrior, right? I mean, a guy that's battled through injuries. You mentioned the concussion and then the knee injury this year, and even the struggles coming back from the knee injury. I wasn't sure if we'd ever see the Race Thompson we saw yesterday again, just because still fighting back from that leg injury, and he just hadn't really looked like himself. But to be able to get the old Race back down the stretch, especially with the news that X isn't coming back, I think that's big, right? I mean, that's just because, again, we've talked a lot about kind of what we assumed our greatest strength was in terms of depth and bench, and turning into kind of a weakness down the stretch where guys have been very inconsistent and who's going to step up. And if we can get the old Race back that's going to put up, 10, 15 points a night, that's big for us down the stretch. And especially, if we want to play ourselves into potentially the second round of the weekend. So again, you just have to look back on yesterday and the entire last 10 years as with appreciation, right, of Race and what he's given this program, putting his body on the line every single year. So to your point, I just appreciate the heck out of him. And I don't think we win without Race Thompson yesterday.
And getting to our final senior, scholarship senior, I should say, Trace Jackson Davis, one rebound shy of another double-double. played a great game. It's so much fun to watch two elite big men that have played against each other for a couple of years, as the announcers even alluded to during the game, who have scouted each other and know each other's moves, and playing chess underneath the basket against each other with turns and under the basket scoops and everything. It's just amazing to see how Trace has evolved as well, doing little under the basket jumps and scoops and everything that you shouldn't see a big man do, is just becoming part of his bag, and a thing that he can do to uh, get around other big guys. It's going to be very exciting to see him in the big tournament against teams that haven't really seen this kind of play from him, and as well continues to be that player that another number that always shocks me with him, his assists. He finished with the team high 6 assists, continues to be really good at finding guys out of the double team and everything. And I think that's the difference from last year to this year, and to what has made him into such a great player and what has contributed to this team's success as well. Whereas last year we needed him to keep the ball and try to get the offense through him. He is able now to be a facilitator for this team, and shifting to just what he means now for this team is just amazing. It's a once in a lifetime situation to be able to give this generation that has seen Hoosier Nation struggle and everything, students that were really young in an elementary school when we had our last kind of really big all-star teams with Zeller and Watford and Oladipo and everything, now have that star guy. I mean, you even hear people talk about, never since Cheney have we had such a player, and it's a once in a decade type of situation. And hopefully the trajectory of IU continues to push us to getting more players like this. But we have to soak in what we have, and we have to soak in these last couple of games we get with him, because the landscape and the play of this makeup of this team is going to be very different next year. And don't want to delve into that too much. We'll get into that and as we look back at this season, but just so thankful for him to come back, set the culture the way he has, believe in Woody. It could have been a very rough transition between coaching staffs, but having Trace Jackson Davis sit in that meeting room and hear what he needed to hear from Coach Woody and say, yes, I'm coming back, set the standard for this team and really set a culture moving forward that Woody would have struggled to build himself had it not been for an all-star like Trace Jackson Davis to step up and agree to that and say, yes, this is how we're going to do it. And so thank you, Trace Jackson Davis, for what you've done. I'm wearing your jersey today in honor of that. Just such, again, nothing, too many words can be said for Trace Jackson Davis. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it's, when it's all said and done, and we get past whatever tournament outcome we have, when we take a step back and look at what Trace Jackson Davis accomplished in an Indiana uniform, not just not only what he's accomplished, what the program's accomplished, and you look at where it was when he started, right? He mentioned it yesterday in his speech, man. There's been some ups and downs. I mean, he went through losing a head coach that recruited him to buying into what Mike Woodson was selling. And it's never easy. He had opportunities. As coach said, he could have gone anywhere he wanted to, essentially, at the end of the season, right? And he chose to stay. And you look at the records he broke this year, and you look at the dominant fashion that he was able to do what he did. And I think in the moment with the roller coaster of a season, it can get lost at times. We've had some ups and downs, but there's been more ups than downs this season. And you look at the last two seasons combined, they're our best two seasons back to back in a decade. I mean, you go back to 2011, 2012, those two seasons right there, after Crean kind of turned some things around. Those are we haven't had two back-to-back 20-win seasons since almost in a decade. And for us to do that, and you look at the most Big Ten wins since 2016, it's a big deal. It's part of turning a program around. And I think, again, when we get down the road and look back on this a little bit, I think our appreciation for Trace, I think it's already high, but I think it's going to continue to grow, and he's going to enter that legend status. I think that what he's been able to accomplish, and yesterday was a grind for him. I had a chance to attend both Michigan games, and he seemed to have his way a little bit more up in Ann Arbor. And this one, I don't know if they adjusted a little bit, but I thought Hunter Dickinson's defense was a little bit better in this game, but he was still able to have his game and pick him apart a little bit and, have that typical Trace game. So again, just at times you felt, especially when things weren't going right in the second half, Trace would bring the ball up and he just put the team on his shoulders and said, I'm going to have to get this done. And he found a way, and he's just been a warrior this year. So again, to your point, today's just about appreciation for a guy that's, I think, given everything to this program. So and incredibly grateful.
And additionally, we have to say a thank you to Michael Shipp and Nate Childress, the walk-on seniors that we have. Nate's been with the team for all 4 years, I believe. Shipp for a little bit less, and then also the senior managers as well. You don't obviously see completely what they do on game time, but you do see what they do sometimes in the social media of the players. Miller Kopp tweeting out recently, showing the managers there, helping him get shots up and everything during off times and everything, being there for the guys. I mean, when you look back as to what you were dealing with when you were possibly in college, it's amazing to think about what these guys take on without any financial compensation of that sort, like you do with a scholarship situation. But the time you put in, the effort you put in, and as well as getting your studies in and everything. Just thank you so much to those guys and what they do. Shipp and Childress, watching all those scouting reports and being there for the players in those practices leading up to games and everything. A next guy who's kind of a pseudo senior, we need to talk about a little bit. Always kind of an interesting situation. Obviously, they don't get that nod on senior night as kind of being their final home game in Assembly Hall, but a player that we won't see, most likely, very unlikely, play in Assembly Hall again. Jalen Hood-Schifino hit that big three towards the end of regulation and everything. Just a great game from him. Not a high scoring game out of him overall. He did finish with the third highest points though, 13, 4 for 9 from the field, made that 1-3, like I said, at the end of regulation to force things. 2 assists, 2 turnovers. So a game where he felt like he disappeared to a degree, but still got his. Your thoughts on Jalen? Well, and before I say that, even too, just to kind of continue our thank you, but thank you to him for the effort that he continues to put in and the window that he continues to open for this Indiana team and the growth that he has had. Not many freshmen are going to be able to step up when the returning senior point guard goes out and be able to carry this team like he has. That Purdue game, many other games where he's just continued to be a fantastic player and kind of had to reshape a little bit my view of a mid-range shot as it's not the high percentage shot, not a shot you'd like to see players take, and still get a little shell-shocked when he elevates and hits that mid-range that is kind of his sweet spot for him. But thank you to him for the incredible season he has supplied and will continue to supply for this Hoosier team. Your thoughts on Jalen?
I think John over in the comments makes, he made a great comment, I think, about the seniors, and I think you can put Jalen Hood-Schifino into that same boat in terms of the trajectory of recruiting, right? I think what you're able to show recruits on the type of success that a guy like Jalen Hood-Schifino has had in this offense, right? I mean, he makes it every time he's out there. There's NBA moves being made by him that you can just tell that's a next level move by a freshman. And to be able to go out and show recruits, here's the type of success you can have in this offense, that's a big deal. I think for the trajectory of recruiting in this program. So I think that's number one. I think that's massive, right? I think a lot of times we focus on the fact that, yeah, he's a one and done, but uh, these are the type of players that you need to have and the type of opportunities that you need to capitalize on in terms of being able to level not only the expectations kind of the program, but also just to raise the level of recruiting as well. I think that you go out and you're able to show what guys can do. It's going to have, I think, immediate success in the recruiting world, not only at the high school level, but you look at kind of some of the holes we're going to have in our program, and had some of this discussion with some folks yesterday. But it's going to be wild, right? It's already the wild west, right? The portal and all that stuff. But this roster, I think, is going to look completely different next year, as it should, right? I mean, there's a lot of attrition and guys leaving, so it's going to. That's just part of it. But it's these guys that have gone out and had success and found success in this offense, and Jalen's probably going to be a top 10. What I don't know where he's projected to go, but I know it's high, and it's because he's come in and had success. And yeah, he has his moments, his freshman moments where he misses some of those mid-range jumpers, but it feels like he's making a lot more than he's missing, and his ability just to kind of work within the flow of the offense, and he's the quarterback out there, and he's just got the maturity and the balance of a seasoned veteran. So yeah, a guy that, again, you feel like you blink and it's gone, right? We've seen him in Assembly Hall probably the last time, and so there's a bittersweet level of that, but man, it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm excited to see what he does kind of on the national stage here over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think the more recent predictions, I think I saw him about 13 or so. I don't dig too deep into those because, again, those are can get really messy as to different people's opinions. But I think you make a good point there at the end, saying we could see it shoot up because now, not like Indiana hasn't been on the national stage, but you get a few more heads turned in the tournament and everything. And so he has great opportunity to improve that stock as he goes into the tournament into March. Malik Renew, I also want to speak about his game. He played only 11 minutes, but in that first play, offensive play that he got the ball, I liked what I saw. We saw the good footwork. He kind of really took it right to the guy. He didn't hesitate. That was kind of some of my critiques of him in the midpoint of this season was we saw such great play at the beginning and then struggled in the middle with just kind of hesitation, and his ball handling wasn't quite there against higher competition defenses, but really liked what I saw from him that first time he got the ball on the block. Just great footwork again, great moves, got underneath and got a great basket. Didn't really play much beyond that. Again, just ending with 11 minutes. You're going to ride who's hot for you, and it was Race's game, so he was going to obviously ride some pine in that. But I do like his game and what he had. I'll talk about a few other guys too, Martha, and then I'll kind of kick it to you. We can just kind of talk about them overall. This next one, I'm going to fight the urge. I know I do this to you all the time. Fight the urge to quiz you on plus minus and just tell you biggest plus minus in this game was 11 from Tamar Bates. And we've been willing and hoping to have a positive input game from Tamar Bates. And I felt like we had that from him. Him hitting the huge three in the second half when Michigan had their biggest lead to kind of really set the momentum on the side of Indiana. And it was a little nerve-wracking, again, because we know how he has played recently and his struggles when Trey Galloway fouled out and was out of the game, and then knowing that we would have to ride Tamar and everything. And I thought he was better on the defensive end, on the offensive end, hitting the threes that he did. He missed a one that hope he would have made right after that first one, but then ended up making one later on in the second half to kind of stretch out that comeback that we were doing. Your kind of thoughts on those guys and the rest of the players?
In a game where I think Trey got into foul trouble, it seemed like he and some of them might, Big Ten officiating is what it is. I'm not even sure what the call was on his fifth, where it appeared to me that he and Hunter Dickinson were just going up for a rebound, and he got tangled up with a guy that's a foot taller than him. Somebody needed to step up, right? And I think while Tamar, there were certainly some opportunities. There was a putback late in the game that was missed, but he knocks down two massive threes, right? And again, I think you start talking about some of the effort, and you mentioned Malik, right? He stayed on the court. You look at, I don't know, what do you have? 2 fouls, I think. I mean, but he's a guy that he really struggled to stay on the court there for a while in the Big Ten season. He'd be out there and get a foul, what seemed like a foul a minute, but he's able to play double-digit minutes. Score a couple big baskets, and I think he's finding his way. Especially, we've talked a lot about the big adjustment from his success early in the season to the physicality of the Big Ten season, and him just figuring out with his size, right, and just getting into foul trouble. But he's starting to figure out how to stay on the court a little bit more. And once he puts that together, I think that early season success will start to come back a little bit, where he becomes that offensive force. And he's had his moments, but he becomes that consistent offensive force that we need. I think Caleb Banks played some strong minutes defensively as well when we needed him. I think he was the first off the bench in the second half when Trey got into foul trouble. So coaches relying on Caleb a lot more too, which I think bodes well for our future. But yeah, it took with Trey. Trey's a guy that usually plays, upward high 30s in minutes, right? 35 to 40 minutes. And he's a guy that was only on the court for, I think, 20 to 25 minutes yesterday. So somebody's got to step up. And I think it was kind of a combination of those guys we just talked about. But we don't win if Tamar doesn't hit those couple baskets. And he's a guy that's been ice cold, right? You look at his box scores, and there's a lot of goose eggs and a lot of big games. So, in that moment when a win was pretty big, it was nice to see him step up. And again, it's one of those things that we talked about, Race finding his stride offensively here now. Maybe those buckets are what Tamar needs to get a little momentum heading into the postseason. I think that's what we can hope for.
Well, and it was great to see him locked in a little bit more on the defensive end as well. He's one that has fallen victim to maybe a little bit of over hustle, a little bit of ball watching that gets him in trouble, communication breakdowns and everything. He just felt more locked in against these guys. And also talking about Trey before he went out, he continues to be someone that I just love his basketball mind. He had that great coast to coast where he just kind of took off and it's like, I see a lane, I'm going. And I love that out of him because he has the physicality that should he run into someone or have an issue there once he gets to that basket, he has good decision making in those circumstances and is physical enough that I believe he can make a basket through that. We're kind of transition into talking about some numbers, and I think the perfect transition from who we just talked about was our bench points. Bench points has been something that has been a real struggle. 0, 2s, very small bench numbers in the last couple of games, something that if Indiana's losing, it's usually because of low bench production, but 10 points from the bench in this game definitely contributed to the win for IU. Another stat that I like in this game, 13 turnovers from Michigan. IU was able to turn those into 12 points. 13 offensive rebounds for Michigan. Some of that was kind of those lucky bounces, situations that kind of be very deflating after you're playing some good defense for teams to get second chances. I think there was one possession they even got like 3 or so offensive rebounds in one go. But yeah, those are some numbers that stick out to me. Any numbers that you have thoughts on?
No, I think I remember at halftime. I mean, the struggle from three. I think jumped out to me a little bit, and we were able to turn that a little bit. I think turnaround. I think we only had one at halftime. We were able to hit 4 in the second half. We got to the free throw line a lot more in the second half. So, it was a really bad statistically speaking first half.
And that one made in the first half by Race.
Exactly. Yeah.
Comically.
Go figure, right? Go figure. Is that a blessing or a curse? As long as he's making them, it's fine. But again, it just he gets gets that trigger finger after he makes one. So within the offense, it's okay. Have a little bit of awareness, but we're good, right? It was nice to see him make that. But yeah, just our ability to, again, it goes back to it kind of encapsulating the season as it was a roller coaster of a game. And you forget, because there was a lot of complaining, but Michigan was fighting for their postseason life. It's our season. It's our senior day. A lot of emotion. I think you had to kind of assume it was going to be a game like that, a game of runs. It was an emotional game, and Michigan. It was kind of they needed that win to even have any consideration for postseason. Now they're going to have to go and probably win the Big Ten tournament if they want to make the NCAA tournament. So. It was just one of those odd games from an emotional standpoint, that it's going to have runs like that. So the crowd was going to play a major role, and we were going to have to find a way. And that's to me the biggest takeaway, is that we were able to find that way. And now we've got some momentum, a double bye. I think it's been a grind towards the back end of the season. It seems like we've had a game every 2 to 3 days. And when you've got guys that are banged up and guys that are playing 40 minutes a night, this break, now we don't have to play until 9:00 on Friday. That's huge. That's a chance to get right. It's the same thing with the women, right? The women's team that they got knocked out early, but they're banged up too, and so it's a chance to get healthy, to get right, to get some fresh legs, and you're doing it while getting a win, which I think is just as big. You've got some momentum, an opportunity to go watch 2 days of basketball, prep, scout, prepare, and hit the ground running on Friday night.
Yep. And before we shift to talk about that, I'm going to bring up one more thing that I want to talk about, news that we got this week, about Xavier Johnson. That's kind of been the roller coaster and been an exciting thing for us to watch as we see him in warmups and everything. And then we had the Iowa game where he was dressed and got us excited. And obviously IU fans, and I was guilty of this as well, or very short-sighted in the situation and how it was going, wanting him back as soon as we could to impact this current season. And yes, if he came back this season, he could have an impact. He could. But IU coming out with the news that he is going to forego playing anything else in this season and petition for that medical hardship and come back next year. I think in the long run and overall, that is the correct decision to be made. I know you can look short-sighted and everything and feel like that's greedy and what it can mean for this team should he be able to play this year and the contributions and how much better things can be. But in the long run, for himself and for the program, this is the right decision to be made. He can come back next year if he wants to have a future in this sport. And he comes back and just plays in this tournament and everything, no one's looking at him in those circumstances. And who knows what percentage of him we get back in these games. But with being able to come back next year, he can be a big focal point. He can fill a major hole that we have in the point guard position and just eases some of that for the team next year. And think about Gabe Cupps coming in and having a veteran like Xavier Johnson to fill that hole and be a mentor for him. I mean, think about what he did at the beginning of the season for Jalen Hood-Schifino's game and them going against each other in the offseason. So excited for it from that standpoint. Now, what it means, Xavier played in 11 games, kind of 10, a little bit over 10 games if you want to count when he came out. Jay Horry was kind of doing the math, delving into that kind of situation, and it looks like IU needs to play 34 games for him to be closer to that threshold. Right now, IU is at 31 games. So what that means, obviously, IU needs to win one in the Big Ten or win one in the tournament at the very minimum to get those 3 extra games in to make you feel a little bit better going into that situation and his petition standpoint. Obviously, a lot of legal stuff and some exemptions can be made in those circumstances, but always scary when you kind of put those types of things up to the boards. And there's been some guys that have come out on the raw end of that deal, but I hope for the best in that situation for him. Any thoughts from you with the Xavier Johnson news?
I think it's a wise business decision, right? I think when you take your future into consideration, right, and that's what it's about. I think you got to respect that decision when you're talking about a young man and preparing for the rest of his life, and whether that's a chance to put a final season on film to be able to go play professionally, potentially overseas, where there's a really fantastic earning opportunity over there because he's got that skill set, right? I think you've got to respect that decision. I think the selfish way of thinking is, man, I'd love to insert him into a potential tournament run, but then, like you mentioned, you got the potential of one final game at this point, and we don't know where he's at. I think we see him bouncing around before games, and it's like, oh yeah, he can play, but I think there's a lot more that goes into it than that. So it's a decision that I think when you take a step back a little bit, you've got to respect, because it gives him a full off season to potentially prepare for one final run, and you think about it, at the same time as a way to I mean, we need perimeter help going into next season, right? And so you've got to look at it as kind of a win there as well, in terms of now we've potentially got an answer at point guard with, we've got Gabe Cupps coming in, but here's a guy that Gabe can learn from that's played a lot of college basketball. So for me, it's a decision that I'm not completely surprised. I started to get wind of it a little bit early that day, that it looked like it was leaning that way, and the timing to me makes sense. You just have to respect it, right? I think it's a wise business decision, all things considered, and one that I'll stand behind X on for sure.
Yep. And now we look ahead, and IU heads into the Achilles heel, I think we can easily call it, of Indiana men's basketball, and that is the Big Ten tournament, something that has been a struggle for Indiana for years and years and years. But again, I think the way things finally shook out after the madness and craziness that was the seeding of the Big Ten tournament this year, like I said, IU finishing, going to be in the third seed, getting the double bye, much needed rest for these guys. And then I feel like I really like the seeding and the situation and the matchups that they got. Indiana will play on Friday at the 9 p.m. game. The first game up in their arm of the bracket is on Wednesday at 9 o'clock as well, when Minnesota and Nebraska play. Then Thursday, the winner of that game plays Maryland, and then Indiana gets the winner of that game on Friday. Really like that line, as opposed to if we were one up, being in the Northwestern spot at the 2, we would play the winner of Penn State, Illinois. Don't really like that as much. Or in the number 4 position, one below where Michigan State is, playing either Ohio State, Wisconsin, or Iowa. Really like the way the seeding landed for these Hoosiers and the opportunity that we have. Your thoughts on this Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, I like the draw. I think I think that too. I like being on the bottom half. It's going to be a battle either way, right? And I have scars from the Big Ten tournament. I've attended a lot of games in Indianapolis that have ended in heartbreak, none of which I'll get into right now. We don't need that. We don't need that evil put on us right now. But I feel like this is kind of a different squad, right? They've got a different vibe about them. They won a couple games last year and nearly beat Iowa. I think having the double bye, and it's very rare that we get into the Saturday of the Big Ten tournament. But being fresh, I like our chances. It's going to be interesting. Nebraska is hot. I don't know that I want to run into them right now. I mean, they went into Iowa and won. I think if you look at I said a tweet out last week. I think if you look at the month of February into March, that they have the Big Ten's best record by a game or two. So they're playing some good basketball. Would not surprise me at all to see us eventually run into them. I think it's going to be Maryland or Nebraska at this point. I would love to have revenge on Maryland. They kind of punched us in the mouth out in DC, and they've won some recruiting battles against us. So I'd love nothing more than to get a win against those guys. We didn't get them on our home court this season, so that would be nice. And then, how it unfolds from there, I'm skeptical to look too far ahead in the Big Ten tournament. It's one of those game by game things for me, just because of our history in it. So I'm just curious to see how we come out. I want to see us punch and and play a good game in the tournament and have a nice run. I think it's just the momentum we need going into the NCAA tournament.
And equally could lead to, knock on wood, whatever you want to do, a very interesting selection Sunday. Should Indiana advance to the finals, would be a game against Purdue, possibly, and then a selection Sunday that evening. What a situation that would be. But yeah, like you said, not going to look too far ahead right now. We just look to see who will be our competition on that Friday. But guys, that's going to do it for this edition, this senior night edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thank you for being with us, guys. Thank you to Martha for being with me as always. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. Go ahead underneath, as the kids say, punch that like button, hit that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. I am at General Chadwick. Martha is at the Mop Lady. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to those listening on different podcast streams. We will be back again Saturday morning. It's going to be a very interesting one for me. It'll probably be a remote on the phone for me because I will be at my daughter's dance competition. But thank you for being with us, guys. Always appreciate you being there. Let's go out there. Have yourself a wonderful day. And as always, let's go Hoosiers.